In the beginning of 2023, I put together a list of 16 manga that I wanted to finish reading by the end of the year. It was a small goal that I set for myself because I felt like I needed to diversify the genres that I've been reading, adding more sports, BL, GL, and just well-loved series that I've never gotten around to. Well, the year has now come to an end, and somehow, miraculously, I have read all 16 manga that I set out to read. I didn't think I was gonna make it in time there for a second, but I pulled through. So, it is only natural, as I am on YouTube, that I need to rank those 16 manga titles, so I can get comments like, why didn't you rank this one higher? May God take pity on your tasteless soul. But through my tears, I will tell myself engagement is engagement and continue to put this video out. With this in mind, let us dally no further and rank the 16 manga titles that I read in 2023. Real quick, you may notice I am not in my usual space. It is messy over there right now because I am reorganizing, and also I just wanted to show you guys my cool ass new desk area. Look at it. It's so pretty. Number 16, Sesame Salt and Pudding. I have nothing against Sesame Salt and Pudding. It was a cute, nice read, but for me, that was about it. Unfortunately, something had to go at the bottom of this ranking, and of the other 15 titles, this was just the least memorable. In fact, I had almost forgotten it a few times when I was trying to recount all of the series that would be going on this list. It's a romance manga about a girl named Haruhi who drunkenly gets married to a man twice her age named Sunohara. Rather than get an annulment, the two actually try to make the relationship work from then on. Since Haruhi is the breadwinner, Sunohara ends up moving in with her as hijinks and drama ensue when friends and family find out about their situation. The dynamics between the main leads of Haruhi and Sunohara was surprisingly sweet despite how they met. They both respect each other quite a bit from the get-go and help each other out when needed. Haruhi as a character is pretty unique as she's this very outgoing construction worker, which is a really cool little trait to have as a female lead. I also like how the series tackles the topic of being with an older partner also means you need to consider that they will die before you as well. Other than those things though, there's not really much that stands out about this manga. It wasn't really good and it wasn't really bad. It was kind of just there. In my mind, being so incredibly neutral on a series probably means that I liked it the least. Even if I say I have more issues with other series that I'm about to mention, I would say that at least means I cared enough about them and was invested in them. Number 15, Voiceover Academy. Voiceover Academy was probably the biggest disappointment on this list for me. Most likely this is because I had enjoyed quite a few of this author's work before, since they are the creator of Special A, as well as the fact that this one was highly talked about by a couple friends of mine. I think what disappointed me the most about this series is just that it never got the amount of time it needed to become anything more than just average. You could just tell that this series was cut short, whether it was because of lack of sales, reception, or something else, because it ended so fast. This is a shoujo drama manga that follows a 15-year-old named Hime who wants to become a voice actor, and to do so, she attends the top school for voice acting. Her big goal in life is to become the main voice actor for her favorite magical girl anime. The only problem is that Hime's voice is extremely rough and she has no idea how to fix this. It's an enjoyable manga, but in waves. At times, the premise is utilized very well and really gets into how voice acting works. These are the strongest moments in the series and what makes me like this manga, showing how Hime slowly learns to become more professional, as well as all the recording processes that go on behind the scenes. You can tell that the author did quite a bit of research on voice acting, since she also talked about in a lot of side panels about going to studios and watching people do voice acting. I really did love Hime's journey through making it in the business, even if it was pretty rushed at times. On the other hand, and the reason that Voiceover Academy is ranked so lowly is because it gets extremely convoluted at times. About halfway through the series, Hime has to start cross-dressing as a test to see whether she can make it in the voice acting world as a boy. While I usually like the cross-dressing trope, and I don't mind this setup that much, as soon as we get into this plot, the story completely forgets about the school aspect, finding Hime in this weird love triangle where she had literally no chemistry with the second lead. This definitely just left me a little confused on where this series was going about halfway in. Where it went, though, was a super rushed ending. All within one volume, we got Hime completing her task of making it in the voice acting world as a boy, going back to being a girl, making her debut, and then the series was over. It felt way too sudden when in the volume right before then, we didn't even have Hime anywhere close to finishing her goal. Which just makes me think that the series wasn't doing very well and/or the author was just kind of done with it.
Number 14, Let's Go Karaoke.
Let's Go Karaoke is an extremely fun time. Somehow within just one volume, the author Yama Wayama packs in so many good jokes and characters. The absurd premise of this series makes the tone comedic while still having darker elements to it too. The only thing is that the series is only one volume, so it leaves you wanting more by the end. This is a comedy series that follows Satomi, a middle school choir boy who is working on his last performance before graduation. One day, he's suddenly approached by a man named Narita who claims he is part of the Yakuza. He wants Satomi to teach him how to sing so he won't lose in his boss's karaoke competition where the stakes are dire. A really poorly done tattoo. The jokes in this manga are great. Each of them land incredibly well in the scenes, whether it's due to a facial expression or a well-timed panel. Having the ever so serious Satomi play the straight man to a group of adult men who are in the Yakuza is already just very funny as is. However, it's even funnier with how seriously this group of Yakuza are taking this karaoke competition that their boss has forced them into. They're all very goofy, but their towering stature, and especially compared to Satomi, makes you stay on edge throughout this series. Even with all the comedy and shenanigans going on, the series still takes time to have some heart to it as well. Our main character Satomi is struggling with his voice changing, so he's not really sure what to do about singing in the future even though he loves it. In some strange world, Satomi is able to accept his changing voice because of a sucky song competition put on by a mob boss who makes really bad tattoos. This manga is really good, but I couldn't see myself putting it any higher, and especially when it's stacked against longer series that I enjoyed a lot more. That sentiment will make me sound a little bit like a hypocrite in a bit though.
Number 13, Futago.
Futago is a manga that I don't remember how I came across it. I think maybe it had something to do with the fact that this mangaka had done some shoujos I've heard of before, and then I just happened to pick this one because I wanted to add more josei into the series I was reading. Either way, it ended up on my list, and it was pretty enjoyable. The best comparison I have for this series is a slightly less toxic Nana where the characters actually talk to each other and through their feelings a little bit more. This is a drama series about two twin sisters, Yukari and Ayaka, who grew up separately when their parents got a divorce. One day, Ayaka shows up at Yukari's house after supposedly having been on her honeymoon with another man. She brings this man to Yukari's house and asks if he can stay there with her, and because of this, the two are able to rekindle their sibling bonds. It was a nice slice of life read that focuses on shifting family dynamics into adulthood. It's a much more understated series that doesn't have too much drama to it and would rather focus on the sisters' relationships with others as well as each other. Showing how they were raised in different households made them different people from each other, but also how they are very similar at the same time. The relationship between them really made this series shine since we don't get too many manga series about sisterhood. Once again, the issue with this series was that the ending was extremely rushed. This was to the extent though that everything that was happening at the end felt out of character for many of the characters. It seemed like it was just thrown in as an afterthought in the last few pages. I don't think it ruined the manga or anything since slice of life series are kind of hard to ruin with endings, but it did just feel forced in for the sake of giving this manga an ending.
Number 12, Perfect World.
Perfect World is a manga that I know a lot of people have differing opinions on, whether it's raging hatred or nothing but love. Personally, for me, I felt like the good outweighed the bad enough that it could be on the higher end of the lower ranked series on this list. The bad does get pretty insufferable though, so let's get into it. This is a romance drama series about a woman named Kawana who reunites with her high school crush that she never got to confess to, Itsuki. The two happen upon each other at a mixer between their employers, and Kawana believes this to be fate. However, it turns out that Itsuki was paralyzed from the waist down and is now a wheelchair user. Shocked by this, Kawana isn't entirely sure on how to approach him further. Let's start with the good in this series. I think quite a bit of research and care was put into portraying people with disabilities as just that. People, with their highs and lows, everyday struggles, and daily monotony. By the way of Itsuki, who is an architect, we are shown the obstacles that wheelchair users face through their daily lives just going out in public. How barrier-free homes and places need to be implemented throughout society so everything can be accessible. In addition to this, we also got quite a bit of discussion on the health complications that can happen when someone is paralyzed. I also really like the different portrayal of relationships we see throughout the series as well. We get introduced to many different characters with varying disabilities throughout the series and how they face everything that comes their way together. The side characters really do make this series special as they do a lot of the heavy lifting when the main focus of the story falls by the wayside. Where this manga suffers so badly is in the middle of the series where they introduce a love square and two shit starters. Now, I don't mind love drama, I don't mind miscommunication, I don't mind a love square. What I do mind is contrived meandering. We know that Kawana and Itsuki are going to end up together. However, this series does everything in its power to not let that happen for 5 volumes. They spend so much time apart and it really is for no reason. All the while we are getting so many reasons why this main couple can't be together, and even in the meantime getting a fake out marriage proposal. It was truly just an exhausting time in this manga that made me not want to continue it at parts. Obviously, as someone who is able-bodied, my perspective on the series is going to be a little different from someone who uses a wheelchair, so if you guys have any differing opinions, please leave those down below. I will try my best to look through them all.
Number one, Ace of the Diamond.
So Ace of Diamond is the only series in this batch that I didn't fully catch up to since it's twice the length of everything else on this list. I ended up getting to volume 17 or chapter 138, I think. So I felt that was a reasonable amount of time to still be able to rank my enjoyment of this manga. If you guys get mad about where this one is placed though, I'm sure we will all blame it on that. This one is a sports shonen series about a boy named Asian who gets scouted to play baseball at the famous Sato High School. The problem is that Asian has all the raw talent but none of the technical skill to become a starting pitcher. Through rigorous practice and a bit of hazing, he starts to learn the basics of the game and becoming a more capable player. Now, the reason I added Ace of Diamond to this list is because I did want to get into more sports series. I am a huge baseball fan and I played softball in high school, so since I've seen so many people say they love this one, I figured I would check it out. Unfortunately though, I came away from the series being a little meh on what I've read so far. I don't hate this manga by any means. It does the sports aspect really well, and I found myself very engaged in all of the games that they've played. Specifically, I find the art really dynamic. The pitches, the batting, the throws all make a huge impact when drawn and gives you that same emotion like when you watch an actual sports game. This was my favorite part of Ace of Diamond, and considering that it's a sports manga, that's what matters the most. How invested it could get me into games. The reason that I'm meh on this series is that I just don't care much about the characters. Haikyuu and Chihayafuru are two of my favorite sports series, and it's not just because of the sports stuff, but because of the characters as well. I have a grasp on each of their personalities down to the side characters, and I get emotional when they get emotional. With Ace of Diamond though, I just didn't feel connected to any of them. Eijun was fine, Furuya and Mizuki were the standouts, but I still didn't care for them that much. The rest of the team, I don't even know if I could tell you the names of them. Most of this manga really is just showing us the games or the two main pictures on Sato. This is just another quick nitpick that I had of the series, but I didn't feel like it had stakes to it. Sato is this ultra-rich high school that has enough for 2 fields, can put kids up in dorms, and scouting. I don't need an underdog story to like a sports team, but I do need some sort of overarching, looming problem on the team that gives this series stakes. I guess the fact that the coach would get fired if they don't go to nationals is kind of that, but I don't care enough about the coach to really care about what happens to him. Mostly, I just don't find that issue compelling since we never really get the coach's perspective in the story.
Number 10, The Night Beyond the Tricornered Window.
The Night Beyond the Tricornered Window was such a strange experience. At times, I would feel lost when reading it. Then I would be laughing at some crazy hijinks. Then I would be genuinely terrified, and then back to being confused. To say this manga is a trip is an understatement. It's a supernatural drama series about a man named Mikado who is able to see ghosts and spirits. One day at his job, Mikado is approached by a man named Hiyakawa, who claims that he has supernatural abilities and that Mikado is his destiny. Hiyakawa proposes that the two team up to solve ghostly crimes that come their way. I think overall, this manga is really good. The characters of Hiyakawa and Mikado are a fun duo that have a lot of sexual tension between them. Mikado plays the straight man, not literally, in this series, as he is deathly afraid of the ghost that he is able to see. His character arc of overcoming these fears through the help of Hiyakawa is nice to watch unfold throughout. On the other hand, Hiyakawa is kind of an enigma for most of the series until we get his backstory and his trauma, after which he became the highlight for me with just how complex his character was. For that matter, the entire cast of this series was great too. Each one had a chance to shine at some point or had some sort of significant moment that made me like them. The character of Erika was especially well written since she starts out as kind of this ominous villain and then turns into this misunderstood, misguided kid. Her relationship with her bodyguard Sakaki was really cute too, since she's never really had a good parental figure in her life, and he ends up taking on that role. While I loved the characters and the art was very creepy at times, I feel like the story did kind of meander a bit. It could have been a much tighter series and more cohesive if there were just a couple arcs that were cut out. There would be times towards the end of the series where the wider plot was finally coming together, but then they would just take some side quest for supernatural hijinks that didn't really matter at all. I loved hanging out with the characters more, don't get me wrong, but the tonal shift between the eerie, creepy stuff going on and then the oh haha funny moments just left me feeling like the mangaka didn't really know what exactly she wanted to do with the series.
Number 9, Cocoon Entwined.
Cocoon Entwined was just beautiful. Pure, unadulterated art. Sure, the plot was not plotting, and at the very least it was leaving me scratching my head. However, the art was so gorgeous that my eyes were just completely glazed over in awe that I couldn't be bothered that I was missing some sort of connecting story. This series is a slice-of-life drama that follows different classes of girls who attend an all-girls school where they are not allowed to cut their hair until graduation. That is until one girl cuts her hair before then, which sets off the events of the series, with each girl's own feelings taking center stage. When the series does make sense, it has both a great story and message, with the art taking center stage. When the series becomes confusing, the art still carries you through. There's so many cool compositional choices that are made throughout this series that makes the full pages look like Victorian paintings. I would even find myself thinking sometimes that they would look like a Degas chaos work. They feel like photos captured of a youthful moment in time with so much life in them. Since the manga is more episodic, some of the chapters are hits, some of them are misses. The chapters that were misses were more just ones where there was a character I didn't vibe with, or I didn't really understand what was happening. Characters do cycle in and out of this series though, so if I didn't find someone compelling, I would at least know that in the next chapter they would most likely be gone for a new character to take their place. The chapters that were hits to me had a more overarching narrative to them, or they were somehow connected to other chapters before it. This manga can easily get confusing, so I wouldn't blame someone if they said they didn't really like it if they tried this one out. However, I still find myself being very drawn to Cocoon Entwined. It just feels like you're having a dream when reading it, like someone's pulling you by the hand and laughing, and there's no war in Ba Sing Se.
But before we get into the next series, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. Are you looking for English language manga in the EU? Then you need to check out Walt's Comic Shop. They have thousands of manga currently in stock with an inventory that's growing daily. Walt's offers low shipping prices for any EU country with bulletproof packaging and speedy customer support. If you enter the code Colleen's MangaRex at checkout, you'll get free shipping on your first order of €40. You can get series like Cocoon Entwined and more at waltscomicshop.com, your #1 source for English language manga in Europe. Now let's get into the next ranking. Number 8, Kono Oto Tomare.
Sitting perfectly right in the middle, we have Kono Oto Tomare, a manga that people were pestering me to read so much that I almost didn't want to read it anymore. I actually did try to watch the anime a few years back, and I didn't really like it that much, so I ended up dropping it. Despite that, I think the manga was able to hold my attention a lot more, just with how good the art was. This is a music drama series that follows a high school student named Takezo, who needs to find new members for his Koto club or else it will get dissolved. In comes the brash and loud former delinquent named Chika, who has a bit of a murky past. At first the two butt heads, but soon they find common ground and reinvigorate the Koto club together along with another new recruit, Satoa. I found myself going in and out of enjoying this series. Every now and then I felt like I was just reading it for the sake of it being on my list, but when this manga gets good, it's good. The first half is definitely where I have most of my issues and why I felt like I was kind of pushing myself to read it. It kind of drags in the setup, pulling out a lot of sports tropes and shonen tropes of battling the teachers to keep the club around, or throwing in a new character to tear the group apart. Ultimately though, these were relatively short arcs, so once you push past this, I feel like the series gets really good after maybe the first 10 volumes. While at first I didn't care too much about the main trio, they've really started to grow on me. Takezo, Satoa, and Chika are a little cliche right at the start, but as the story goes on, their own stories get fleshed out a lot more. I love Satoa the most out of all of the characters though, and part of me just wishes this series was a shoujo at times, because I really would rather her be the main character. We get so much more of Chika and Takezo, like their daily lives, and I just wish we got more of that for Satoa. Her struggle with her family was the most compelling arc, and I was a little disappointed that it was resolved fairly quickly for such heavy family drama. Another big draw for this series is the artwork. I actually didn't like it too much in the beginning, or at least it just wasn't as good as it's gotten, but it has really just become fantastic. The art lends itself to expressing the music that is being played so well. There's some gorgeous moments where a character is playing the koto and the atmosphere drawn around them perfectly gives you the feeling that they describe this song as being. All in all, this series is placed smack dab in the middle because I do like it quite a bit. There are just nitpicks that I have about it at the same time that have kind of made me waver on my enjoyment. There hasn't been a really big moment in this series that has drawn me in and made me become obsessed with this manga yet, so I feel like I've been left teetering on the edge of thinking that the series is just okay or the series is really good.
Number 7, Banana Fish.
This opinion might be controversial. I know that Banana Fish, the anime, is really well loved, but I'm not sure how well revered the manga is amongst a wider fan base as well. When the series was at its best, it was an emotional story about two boys who were able to show each other just what they needed at just the right time. When it was at its lesser best, the manga became a little tedious with repetitive arcs and an endless march of villains. The manga is an action drama that centers on Ash Lynx, who is a young boy that leads a street gang. He ends up getting caught in a nefarious plot to sell a new kind of drug, which is what drove his brother insane. With the help of the unassuming Eiji Okamura, the two try to unravel the secrets held by the mafia as well as the American government. For a manga made in the 80s, this series holds up surprisingly well. I think that is evident enough that the anime was able to update it for being set in the modern day, and there still wasn't that much changed about the series other than adding cell phones. That may also just say something about America though. While the art to some may be dated, I actually really liked it, and especially as the series went on. There were some great paneling and effect decisions that I think really made this series feel like a noir film at times. In addition, I loved almost every character too. Ash and Eiji were obviously the standouts of the series, with Ash being a little bit more of my favorite since he did get a majority of the focus of the story as well as a majority of the trauma. These side characters were also big highlights for me, with Sing and Yet Long being unexpected favorites. All the characters and their intertwining relationships with one another is really what makes this manga shine. Where this series lost me every now and then was when they would recycle story beats for each new arc. I didn't mind it much the first few times, but towards the last third of the series, it did get really repetitive. It usually goes something like, Ash gets captured, the gang tries to figure out how to get him to escape, Ash escapes on his own, he reunites with everyone, they defeat the villain, and then they have some nice wholesome interactions before it starts all over again. It just felt like the series was trying to keep going when it could have ended a little bit earlier. I think if the series was 15 volumes and maybe not 19 volumes, it would have held my attention pretty consistently. My other big issue is that I just did not like the ending. I know many people love how the series ends, and it's completely fine and understandable if you do. But for me, it just seemed out of nowhere. To keep it as spoiler-free as possible, since I don't want to give spoilers to people, it felt like tragedy for the sake of tragedy.
Number 6, My Broken Mariko.
So, here's where I sound like a bit of a hypocrite. Earlier, I said Let's Go Karaoke was lower on the list because it was only one volume, and now I am saying that My Broken Mariko deserves the number 6 spot, even though it is also only one volume. Sometimes we must follow our gut instincts though, and the series is truly phenomenal. It was also just something I very much needed at just the right time, since I too have also lost a really close friend earlier this year. It follows a woman named Tomoyo who just found out about the death of her friend Mariko. After years of Mariko enduring abuse by the hands of her father, she decided to end her own life. Tomoyo, in a state of grief, becomes determined to send her best friend off in the best way she can possibly think of. This manga is only 6 chapters long, and in those 6 chapters, we see the cycle of grief that someone can go through when they lose someone close to them. From the initial shock and numbness to anger, to the explosion of tears when you finally come to realize that they are gone forever. Tomoyo goes through all of this while recounting all of her years with Mariko. The good times, the bad times, and the times of silent contentment. It's an emotional story that rips your heart out and pieces it back together again, showing that you may have lost someone important to you, but they are never truly gone. Their existence lingers through your life in even the smallest things. The time that you spend together is very much real, and it will continue with you for the rest of your life.
Number 5, Hirayasumi.
Hirayasumi is just one of those series that wraps you in a big hug. The manga is like snuggling under a blanket on a chilly fall day with a hot cup of coffee in hand. It radiates so much love and warmth in each chapter. Just a wholesome, feel-good manga all around. This episodic slice of life series follows a young man named Hiroto who just works at a part-time job to get by. He doesn't really mind this though because he has no large goals for himself at the moment. When the old lady that he has befriended passes away though, he finds himself as the sole inheritor of her home. Along with this, Hiroto's cousin Natsumi ends up moving in with him as she's starting art school in the same area. I know a lot of people don't really enjoy slice of life manga, but it is always some of my favorite series. They just feel so human, like the author writing it has this inherent affinity towards people. Hirayasumi is no exception to this either. From chapter 1, it is just brimming with heartfelt warmth that all stems from the house that the two live in. Each character slowly gets developed and fleshed out throughout the story. Hiroto may seem like a happy-go-lucky guy with nothing going on below the surface, but he took a long way to get to that personality. Natsumi's struggles of being in a new town and a new school is also very relatable. Fretting about things like making friends or giving good first impressions while also trying not to fall behind in her classes. At the end of the day though, this series is all tied together because of the house that Hiroto's unlikely friend left him. Her presence never leaving the series, as the house that they are surrounded in was her last present to Hiroto. It's a really lovely way to tie everything together in the manga, and especially since this character was only really around for one chapter.
Number 4. Madame Petit.
Madame Petit is nothing short of a thrilling adventure epic. The manga brings to mind movies like Indiana Jones or Around the World in 80 Days when reading it. Our characters travel across countries in pursuit of a mysterious villain with gunfights, treasure, espionage, and more. So much happens over the course of these 11 volumes that it almost feels like you yourself went on the trip with them. The manga is set in the 1920s where a young girl named Mariko has recently found herself married to a much older man. Although their age difference is concerning, Mariko is just happy to start her new life as she boards the Orient Express for their honeymoon. However, disaster strikes when her husband is found dead in his train car on the first night. It is here where she meets Niram, an Indian man who has taken a liking to her, and the two set off for a journey of a lifetime. I adored every bit of this manga. It has all of the charm of those types of adventure movies that you used to love and want to replicate when you were a kid. The fact that the series is also set in the 1920s just lends to a very different vibe than any other manga that I've read. It immerses you in the time period with flapper era fashion and fills in all the details of different countries like France and India. Every moment along the way has high stakes action with Niram and Mariko evading capture or death. It is never a dull moment when reading this series. Both Mariko and Niram are incredibly interesting characters who you grow so incredibly fond of by the end of the series. At times, it just feels like they were your own companions on the wild ride that you went on. Mariko is incredibly spunky and is the much needed light in a very heavy story. On the other hand, Niram seems like a snarky playboy, but he hides a deep family trauma that he is currently trying to resolve. While they start off constantly bickering, they quickly come to understand each other as they go on this journey together. The romance that slowly blossoms between the two of them really makes your heart flutter due to the incremental burning desire, as well as the fact that there are just very intimate moments displayed in the art. There could probably be things that I criticize about the series, but the good far outweighs any nitpick I would have about it. If a manga like Madame Petit can be so dazzling that I'm enamored with it from the very beginning, then I can't really ask for much more than that in a manga.
Number 3. Ten Dance.
Ten Dance was a manga that I added to this list on a whim. I knew that I wanted to add a dance manga when I was making this reading list, and because the fact that Ten Dance was also a BL, I was like, Sure, I'll just throw it in. I was completely not expecting for this series to be one of my favorite reads of this year, but it just had that perfect blend of romance, drama, and competitive sporting that pulled me in almost immediately. The manga focuses on two men who share the last name Shinya despite both being complete opposites from each other. Shinya Sugiki, who is the master of standard ballroom, and Shinya Suzuki, who is the king of Latin dance. The two have always had a distaste for each other, but when Sugiki wants to enter the 10 dance competition, he asks Suzuki to join him. Begrudgingly, the two recognize each other's dance talent as they teach the other their specialties, and realize that there might be more sprouting between them as well. As someone who is not very good at discerning movement in illustrations, this manga never left me confused. I have read other dance series where I couldn't really gauge the actions happening on the page, but 10 Dance's art is so fluid that I could feel the characters just gliding around. The art really just comes alive with the curving line art from the author, showing us every slight shift in their bodies from their head to their fingertips to their hips to their toes. Not just this, but you can also get a great sense of their own dance styles through the art as well. Sugiki is very powerful and commanding. His dance style is more structural and standard and rigid, and the art shows this. Suzuki, on the other hand, is a Latin dancer, so his dancing is much more fluid. The art feels like moving water on the page to portray that difference. When they're dancing together, Suzuki and Sugiki have a completely different art style than when they're dancing separately. The two are more electric. There's more passion and joy and energy between them, perfectly showing how well they get along and how much they actually love and respect each other despite saying that they don't like the other. This manga is still ongoing, so I cannot wait to see where it takes me. The last volume I read actually ended on a cliffhanger, so I am just so excited to see what is going to happen to these characters next. Either way, I want them to finally stop being scared of like admitting their feelings to each other because they're so clearly in love, but they just don't want to date. They just need to date.
Number 2. Land of the Lustrous.
Of the manga on this list, Land of the Lustrous is the freshest in my mind as it is the second to last manga that I read. Even if it was the second to last in reading, it was the second to first in enjoying. This is an eerie psychological sci-fi series that asks, what maketh man? Or I guess in this case, what maketh gem? The series is set in a world where gems known as the Lustrous are constantly put under imminent threat of being captured or killed by the Lunarians. These gems each have their own unique hardness and colors that the Lunarians would like to take for themselves. Our main character, Fos, is of the most fragile gem specimens, and due to this, they are not able to fight with everyone else. This leads Fos to taking on the job of natural historian, which changes the trajectory of their life forever. There are two things that I love about this manga. The first being the obvious, which is the art style. This is one of the things that will just naturally make you gravitate towards this manga. The use of harsh contrast between the blacks and the whites on the page will just make your eye go to every corner of a panel. It doesn't matter if it's a full spread or not, each layout is purposefully placed on the page. My friend Danny over at Lines in Motion has a wonderful video all about the art in Land of the Lustrous, so I would highly recommend you guys to go watch that video because they knocked it out of the park with that one. The other thing that I think this manga does so well is the breaking down of a character. Normally when people think of this trope, they associate it with series like Mad Men or Breaking Bad. It's usually associated with some disgruntled old white dude at the center. But this manga has a gem of no gender at the center, which makes the study of what makes us human that much more insightful to me. We are starting with a character that is technically not human at all, but we follow Fos as they become increasingly more emotional. Fos as a character is incredible. They start off as this airheaded character that has no care in the world. However, with more things to care about throughout the series, Fos starts to learn about betrayal, deceit, anger and loss. I really want to emphasize how well this series has a character devolve in a realistic way over time. The actions that Fos takes throughout the series may seem reckless, but it makes sense for what their state of mind is. I really don't want to get into spoiler territory though, so I will cut myself off there. It is just very good. If I just had one stupid critique about Land of the Lustrous, it's just that I have a very hard time differentiating characters from each other. Each of the gems does have a different hairstyle, but as the series goes on, these hairstyles change and I kind of lost track of who was who a lot of times. In addition, while the contrasted art is gorgeous and I love it and it's beautiful, it also doesn't really help when I can't differentiate the characters from each other. Very slight criticism though, and if anything, it just means I am dumb.
And number 1, Bokura no Kiseki.
And finally, we have my number 1 favorite read of the year. For anyone who has been around on this channel within the last like 6 months, I don't think you'll be surprised by this pick. I literally made a 1-hour-long comprehensive character guide for this series. That is just how obsessed I am with Bokura no Kiseki. The reincarnation fantasy mystery drama that asks the hard-hitting question of how much PTSD can we give high schoolers? The series is centered on a boy named Minami who has had memories of his past life as a princess named Veronica ever since he was a kid. In this life, Veronica was betrayed by an allied country and killed with magic along with everyone else that resided in her castle. When Minami enters high school, an incident occurs that eerily looks similar to the magic from his previous life. This leads him to believe that he may not be the only kid in his class who was reincarnated. Look, if you give me a manga with a big cast, 9 times out of 10, that shit is going to become my favorite series. Bokura no Kiseki delivers on that. With over 52 characters in the main cast of the series, you get invested in each and every one of their stories. Not just in their present lives, but their past lives too. The way that their memories affect their current realities, as well as their current views on the world, is done so masterfully. You feel for each character as they deal with the traumas of a war that they were never in, as they are bystanding high school students. On top of the amazing character writing, the world building and the magic system are fantastic as well. It starts with just the basics in the beginning, but as the series unfolds, it becomes more and more intricate. Somehow though, it never gets confusing because each plot point or new piece of information is crucial to the story. What may seem like some throwaway line or throwaway facial expression made by a character could actually end up changing your entire perspective of what a character may be or what they may be scheming. And there is lots of scheming in this series. The magic is also just incredibly so cool, and I feel like anyone who is a fan of Full Metal Alchemist would really appreciate this series. People in this manga aren't just born with magic. They have to go through a ritual and give daily sacrifices to be able to use their powers. This whole magic system and finding out all the intricacies of it is what makes the plot so engaging, since it plays such a huge part in all of the mysteries of the series. My only critique of Bokura no Kiseki is that the art can be a little rough in the beginning. I don't think it deters anything, but I do think it makes it hard to differentiate characters from another, and that could kind of put people off. Bokura no Kiseki did start in 2007, and, you know, the art style of the 2000s I feel is a little more chaotic than it is nowadays. It's just what was popular at the time. Other than that, this manga is absolutely incredible. One of the best written mangas that I have read since Chihaya Furu and Seven Seeds. And if you know me, that is saying something. I am so happy that I read this series this year, and I'm just so glad I put it on my list because this really just became an obsession for me. I know it's a long shot, but I really hope someone picks up this manga in English as soon as possible because it is truly amazing, and I feel like it would have such a widespread appeal if people just read it. And with that, we are finally to the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching all the way through if you did, and if you skipped around, I'm on to you. I'm sure not everyone agrees with my opinions that I gave in this video, and that's okay. But let's all remember that at the end of the day, they're just opinions. I had a great time reading all of these series, and I've already planned to do this again for next year. Tentatively, I have my 16 titles ready to go for next year. I'm gonna go ahead and just list those off real quick for you guys. We have Dorohedoro, again, Bronze no Tenshi, Fool Night, Pet Shop of Horrors, My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, Children of the Whales, Sleeping Dead, Sugar Sugar Rune, Conductor, Futari Escape, Two Flowers for the Dragon, Oz, Planetess, Promise Neverland, and My Love Story. Any of these titles could be subject to change by the end of this year, but there they are, and if you guys want to join me for the end of 2024, there you go. We can discuss them then. Anyway, that is the last video for 2023. I want to thank all my hojos for making this another great year on YouTube. Thank you, my hojos, for watching. Welcome to any new hojos. Read Chihayafuru, and I'll see you guys next year.